You're watching BreakThru News.
I'm Charlotte Hohenstein, and you're watching BreakThru News on BTR today. We're talking about the thriving world of social entrepreneurship. Have profit and social purpose finally joined forces? Joining us today is Jenna Nicholas, CEO of Phoenix Global Impact, a consulting firm for social entrepreneurship, and associate at Calvert Special Equities. So, Jenna, the White House released an announcement at the end of this past June, so very recently, saying that impact investors are leading the way to solving our most important problems. Social entrepreneurship, from what I've heard, it sounds almost too good to be true. What is social entrepreneurship?
Sure. So social entrepreneurship is really this whole field that's been emerging over the past 20, 30 years. And what it is social entrepreneurs are individuals who are leading organizations where the motivation of these organizations isn't just about maximizing profit, but also having a social impact. And we use this language of a triple bottom line, which is people, planet, profits. And so social entrepreneurs define success in their ability to be able to transform the societies that they work in. And impact investors are those investors that are looking to invest in these social entrepreneurs. And so it's very exciting to see the White House's endorsement of this.
So this idea is relatively new, right? I mean, it seems like it's really the past decade that it's actually gotten traction. How far has this idea come? Do you think that the business community and the business establishment right now has fully embraced it?
Yeah, I think it's been really exciting, particularly as you say, over the past 5 to 10 years, to see how much more the business community is engaging in this way. So Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Credit Suisse all now have, and many other banks have, social impact divisions. And part of this is because of this huge client interest that's emerging in actually having investment opportunities that, again, aren't just around maximizing profit, but also having this social impact. And so to see these well-established institutions really going in this direction is a really exciting development. And whereas 20, 30 years ago this was quite a niche field, it's now at many of the main conferences and engagements this is coming up as a key topic of interest.
Well, it seems like it now has credibility in business establishment terms, no?
Exactly. And I think part of that is having these very tangible case studies of organizations who have proven that it's possible to do this. I think we see this within education technology, within a lot of the water purification technologies that are emerging, that it isn't just this illusion that it's possible to have this huge social impact and also create great profits, but it's a reality.
It seems like it still is extremely broad and spans everything. I mean, socially ethical companies, socially responsible companies can mean anything from microfinance, which is really towards the end of the non-profit section, to, giant companies, like Tom's or Warby Parker. Is that the case? Is it kind of diffuse right now? Is it really just about this social mission? Or do you think it's becoming more defined?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, and certainly there's a lot of debate as to how do you actually define social entrepreneurship and how do you define impact investing, and there are different players that are coming into the space, some of whom are looking for very high returns, and the social impact is just one portion of a much larger portfolio, and others who really the social impact is the primary motivation, and it's great if they can make some money, but that's not the primary focus. And you see this even in terms of larger companies like Ben & Jerry's, for example, who, whilst being a very successful company, are embedding their social mission into their company in terms of the way in which they engage in new markets and what have you. So I do think it is still pretty broad, but I feel like what's happening more and more, and there are impact investing and social enterprise conferences that are happening on a daily basis literally around the world, is that there's more and more of a community that's developing where people are looking at sharing deals amongst each other, are really trying to support people in the process of engaging in this type of work, particularly sort of next gen and millennials who are looking both in terms of for careers, but also for people who are inheriting family wealth and are looking at investing in certain companies. Supporting people in that process, I think, is a big part of the work of the sort of impact investing and social enterprise industry.
So for people like you've just mentioned, millennials or people just graduating college who all they know is they want to make a difference, it seems like right now, at least you only really have one obvious option, which is to go into a non-profit or an NGO, or maybe you can sort of rationalize and say, well, I'm going to make tons of money and then go into philanthropy down the line. Do you think people are too quick to split the two up? Are we at a point with the whole field of social entrepreneurship where people can be thinking about careers right out of college in this middle way?
Yeah, no, and I really feel as though there are, I mean, it's still challenging, right? There still is an issue of, sort of talent in the impact space, and how do we help to support more and more people that are graduating from university and want to do this type of work. But I feel like whether it's working directly for a social enterprise, both domestically within the US or also internationally, there's a huge demand for talent in these organizations. And in fact, sometimes it's not even just the financial capital that's the biggest need for these organizations, but it is that human capital. And so, I think for people who are interested in wanting to work for the social enterprises themselves, there's a huge area of interest there. And similarly, I think on the investment side, there are an emerging number of, whether it's family offices or smaller impact investing funds, or, as we mentioned before, larger financial institutions that are setting up these social impact divisions that, again, are all looking for talent. And so I think that it's important. It can be harder to navigate the opportunities, but I think it's a worthwhile endeavor in terms of this question of an alignment between people's values and the professions that they're pursuing.
And certainly it seems like the opportunities are only going to become more numerous as the field grows. We're going to take a quick break for a brief excerpt from this week's episode of Serious Business featuring Level Up.
My dad's old tape deck, and I'll be sitting on my bed with my hands under my legs, and it'll all come back to me. It's a waking summer's dream. The water was cold and clean as it rose above my knees, and I let down everyone when I couldn't get myself to jump. It looked like fun.
We're back with our discussion on social entrepreneurship and society's change agents. So, Jenna, it seems like right now social entrepreneurship is primarily a private sector thing, right? And of course, this makes sense in terms of its ties to entrepreneurship, business practices. But there does seem to be an increasing role of governments, especially on the international level. Do you think this is a good thing, a necessary thing, an inevitable thing?
Totally, and I think one of the great examples of this are what we refer to as social impact bonds or development impact bonds, and had the opportunity to be working with the World Bank Group in exploring this area. And it started in the UK, actually, focused on Peterborough, and there was a public-private partnership that was focused on reducing the reoffence rates of prisoners in Peterborough. And what was created was basically a financial instrument that incentivized the private sector to come in and invest in local solutions to this, where the British government committed to paying back the investors their capital plus interest if they were able to meet certain metrics around reducing the reoffence rates of prisoners. And this model is now being replicated really all around the world, in developing countries and developed countries. And I think it's a really exciting paradigm for how the government can provide the support for this emerging field of social entrepreneurship and social engagement. And I think that it's often that we can think about the business community and the sort of the political community as very separate entities, and I think this is a really great way for this interaction and these partnerships to create the type of impact that we're talking about.
And it certainly seems to be a global movement, an increasingly global movement. I know June of last year there was the G8 Social Impact Investment Taskforce set up, and every participating company, which includes most of the G8 and a lot of European Union countries, basically have one government representative and one non-government expert looking at social entrepreneurship. So it seems to be increasingly global in scale. Now, I know you've taught in Beijing at the Tsinghua School of Economics and Management, so you have a lot of experience in China firsthand, and it does seem to be a very global thing. Do you see people all having the same mindset about social entrepreneurship in different cultures? Do you find that you sometimes need to translate the idea into slightly different terms? Talk a bit about that, because that's really interesting to me.
No, great points and questions. And the one thing on the G8 gathering, so they're having an annual gathering, which they met just a few weeks ago in London. And what was great about this in this G8 National Advisory Board was seeing how countries were making these commitments to, where Canada came forward, Italy, of actually how they were going to take these large macro issues around impact investing and social entrepreneurship and apply it to the nuanced environments that they were working with. So I think it's a great example of how we can see countries working together to develop those local solutions. And certainly, I mean, I know this intimately from the work in China, that it is so important to have that local adaptation of these ideas, because trying to take concepts that might work in America into environments like China or India or elsewhere that have very different operating environments, it isn't going to work. Like, it has to have those Chinese characteristics as such. And I saw this from a language perspective. There's the word for a non-profit in Chinese is 非政府组织, which literally means not like anti-profit, which of course is not the idea in any way at all, right? But conceptually is a very hard one for people to gather. So the importance of having those more nuanced vocabulary and engagement is key.
So what are the main challenges, would you say, for the field moving forward? Are there any big hurdles that you're looking at that need to be negotiated?
Yeah, so I think the one that we brought up around the political engagement is a key one. I think it's like, how do we navigate the role that governments should play in this work? I think this question that we often talk about mainstreaming impact investing. So like, how do we get more of the larger financial institutions involved, whether it's sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, insurance companies? I think for the field to really reach the sort of goals and aspirations that many of us who are working in this area have for it, it's essential that these more established financial institutions become even more engaged. And so creating financial instruments that appeal to the interests and needs of these institutions is just going to be key. And I think ensuring that we are also responsive to the needs of the communities that we're working in. I think we can sometimes get so abstracted at the investor level of looking at how do we create this product or that product, but actually ensuring we're also really engaged with the communities that we're working in is also key.
So it sounds like actually a very human element, and it's really just a matter of getting everyone on board and finding the will to do this.
Very much so, very much so.
So final question, you are obviously someone entrenched in this field of social entrepreneurship. Is it overwhelming trying to save the world, or do you find constant encouragement in the tangible progress that you're seeing through these projects?
I think it's both, right? I think it's really encouraging to see more and more people engaged in this work, and just to be part of incredible communities of people where we can support each other as we're engaging in this work. And I think it can be easy to become overwhelmed by the sort of greatness and gravity of the work that we're all engaged in, but breaking it down into those small component parts that we can focus on, and sort of the interaction between the global and the local, and just taking really each day and each moment as it comes, I think is a key part of the work. And so I'm constantly inspired by the people and the organizations that I work with.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jenna, for joining me today. We're going to have to stop there. Share your thoughts with us on Twitter at BreakThru Radio. We'll be right back in a moment after this quick excerpt from a special episode of Live Studio featuring Boyfriend.
I'll tie her up and fuck her, but so long she'll trade her thong for the pins. Whoop, step, goddamn esophagus. Cut her up like Kanye, put her cunt in the sarcophagus. I think there's been an avalanche, so much blow on top of us. Hearts racing from this angel dust. Vicodin ain't stopping us. Charms like Dracula's, blood in the vial. And yeah, my vag is fertile like the Valley of Nile. Egyptians said my ship is in. Cleopatra has landed. Don't you wish you could have made me come like my hand did? Like my hand, like my hand did.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm Charlotte Hohenstein, and this is BreakThru News, your window into today. Be sure to check out breakthrouradio.com through the weekend for our continued Social Week coverage on BTR, including our report on how terrorists use social media. That's it for what's breaking through the news today. Tell us what's breaking through your world on Twitter at BreakThru Radio. I'm Charlotte Hohenstein, and thank you for joining us.